Fallout from Dr. Fauci's testimony continues. We're going to have some cuts for you. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Jim Jordan, and others really going after him for schools being shut down, for lockdowns. 4 years later, the fact that there have been no consequences still remains crazy to me. And I bet to our guest as well, Dr. Phil joins us now. Dr. Phil, can you believe, and by the way, Philip McGraw, Dr. Phil as you know him, you've got a story coming up on the Trump verdict. We'll get to that in a moment. But can you believe that 4 years after all of our schools shut down, so many people out there were not allowed to work, that there's really been no consequences for anyone who got all of this wrong, that all the politicians who stood behind it got reelected, that we basically have never had any reckoning for what I think is the biggest public policy failure in my life, and for many people out there, other than Vietnam, I can't imagine what you would even consider to be a similar level of public policy failure in the last 50 or 60 years.
Well, I think it's an absolute outrage. And, I said at the time, everybody said I was some kind of lunatic, but I said at the time that the mismanagement of this quarantine was going to create more damage, particularly for our young people, than the virus ever would. And that it was abandoning these children in the middle of the biggest mental health crisis that we had ever seen, the highest levels of depression, anxiety, and loneliness. And, by the way, when it happened, the referrals for sexual abuse and molestation and abuse dropped an average of about 50% nationwide because the mandated reporters at the schools, the coaches, teachers, counselors, weren't able to keep an eye on these children. We instead abandoned them at home behind locked doors with their abusers. Nobody seemed to even think about that. Nobody's even talked about that. They shut it down. We created tremendous emotional developmental gap, educational gap. And they knew, and what they said was, well, we did the best we could with what we knew at the time. No, they did not. They did not do the best they could with what they knew at the time. They had a new hammer, and everything looked like a nail. So they went around shutting everything down. They ruined family businesses. They ruined the educational system. And, now it's all coming out that most of this was made up, no science behind it whatsoever.
Dr. Phil, appreciate you being with us here on Clay and Buck. I know that you have airing tonight on Merritt Street Media, the Trump verdict, a judicial travesty. Tell us what this is going to walk through. And we obviously just are all still reeling a bit from the absurdity and also the very dark day of the Trump conviction on this on this insane case. What are you going through in this documentary? Why should people tune in?
Well, listen, I'm not a lawyer. Don't mean to brag, but I'm not. I approach this from a jury standpoint because that's what I spent most of my professional career doing, is working as a trial scientist within the litigation arena. And I'm looking at this in terms of what was the jury presented with here? What did they see? And we've got a case where no one else in the history of New York has ever been brought to trial on these kind of charges for manipulating records in this context. And these were two different sets of charges. Both were time barred for statute of limitations. They only got brought back to life by combining them and coming up with a new theory by which they could be brought up to felony level. He's the only person that's ever been charged in this way. It's by a judge that made contributions to organizations that were dedicated. I mean, their mission statement was to stop the radical right-wing Trump agenda. Sort of rhetoric is what they used. His daughter is a fundraiser for the Democrats, a DA who, look, the American Bar Association says that the mandate for a prosecutor is to seek justice, not convictions. He makes a commitment when he's campaigning that he's going to get Trump. They made so many violations of due process during this trial. All gets into the jury box. All of these things that they get contaminated with. And so for the first time in 235 years, they get a felony conviction against a president with a case that should have never been brought. And I don't think they'll hold it on appeal, even though the appellate division in New York reverses about 4% of the time. He may have to go to the federal ladder to get up to a reversal, but they don't care because all that will happen after the election. It's interesting that the left is so sensitive about labels that they want to refer to convicted felons as justice-involved individuals rather than convicted felons until Trump gets convicted. Now he's a convicted felon.
You're going to be interviewing Trump at Mar-a-Lago in the near future, I think next week. I'm curious, how long have you known?
This week,
it's this week. It airs on Thursday night.
Okay. How long have you known Trump on a personal level? I'm sure you've met him years and years ago, because I know initially Oprah and he were really tight. I think that relationship is a bit frayed, we may say. But I'm curious how long you've known Trump personally.
Probably 15, 20 years. We've known each other, and we don't have a daily relationship, but we have a good relationship, mutual respect for one another, and I talked to him last night on the phone for a good while, and he understands that I'm going to do a no holds barred interview and ask the hard questions, and but he also knows that I think this was a travesty, that I don't think it's a case that should have ever been brought, and I think that he got targeted, and I think he got really mistreated in the judicial system. I don't think this was motivated by his conduct. I think it was politically motivated.
We're talking to Dr. Phil. He's got a special airing tonight, Trump Verdict, a Judicial Travesty. Dr. Phil, where can folks go to watch this?
Well, my new network is Merit Street Media, and all you have to do is go to meritstreetmedia.com, and when you open it up, there's a homepage that says Channel Finder. You just click that button, and it says put in your zip code, and it'll tell you what channel it is in your area. Or you can go to Apple, the Apple Store, or Google Play, and download Merit Plus and get the app, and you can watch it for free on your iPad, computer, phone, whatever. It's a free app. You just download it, and bang, it opens right up, and you just hit live, and it's right there. You can watch it when it airs or any time after that. So the Merit Plus app is great.
And it's great that you're putting out this documentary so quickly right after the verdict, because I think a lot of people are, there's the this is absurd feeling that a lot of folks have, I think, Dr. Phil, and then there's also the oh my God, what's happening to our country feeling, and those coexist. I would say myself that coexists in my mind right now. But on the positive side of things, I mean, what is your level of confidence that more and more Americans are waking up to what is being done to Donald Trump, who maybe weren't firmly in the Trump camp before?
Well, I think I've heard a lot of people say I wasn't in the Trump camp before, but I am now. I've had people tell me they've picked up the computer, got on the computer or the phone, and made contributions, and well, they should, because I can tell you, this is not about Donald Trump. This is about all of our right to due process. This is about us not getting hijacked by a weaponized judicial system because people don't like where we stand on issues. He is standing in the gap for every one of us, and this has to stop. We've got to stop weaponizing the legal system, and that's exactly what happened here. Come on, it's no coincidence that 8-10 years after the fact, that right before the election, he gets hauled in and convicted of these charges and 34 convictions. Look, they said it was a felony charge for every invoice, check, and ledger entry, and they did it each month. So this is overcharging. It shouldn't have been charged to begin with. It was overcharged when they did it, and it's just going to come back to bite them. And I think what they're going to do is sentence him to 4 more years in the White House is what they're going to do.
I don't know if you ever publicly say, do you announce how you're going to vote in presidential elections? Have you done it in the past? Do you do it now?
I have not, and I am apolitical. I am totally apolitical. I talk about cultural issues, not political issues. This is the most non-productive Congress in over 50 years, and as I think about it, that's probably a good thing. We got enough laws. I think when they're gridlocked, I feel safer than if they were.
I know a lot of people feel that way. They wish that we would just do nothing, right? Like, just don't.
Exactly.
What's the physician rule? First, do no harm. There's a lot of harm being done by politicians.
Boy, I agree. And, what most people don't realize is how much of our lives are impacted by non-elected officials like Fauci. He's not elected. He's hired and appointed and making so many important decisions that we all have to live with, and that's got to stop.
Last question for you, and I know we appreciate the time and encourage people to check that out. Why do you think so many people in America today are afraid to say, I got it wrong? If Fauci just came out and said, you know what, we overprotected, we shouldn't have made kids wear masks, it was an error that we made, in retrospect, I wish we could fix it, I think a lot of people would not be happy, but at least they would acknowledge that they got something wrong. Why do you think so few people are willing just to admit that they did something or got something wrong?
I think it's narcissism, and I think they're protecting their jobs and their book deals and their legacies, and they're putting themselves ahead of the country, and that needs to stop. We've got serious problems, and we need serious people to deal with those problems, instead of folks that are just down there trying to feather their own nest. And I think he's a perfect example of that. And that's the kind of things that we're calling people to account at Merritt Street Media, and that's the reason I started this network, frankly. And we're doing exactly that. It's not political. I call them out on both sides and give them a chance to tell their story. And I am interviewing Trump on Thursday. I've got a series of requests into President Biden. I'm interviewing Kennedy. I'm talking to everybody that's got a role in all of this. So I'm giving everybody a chance to talk, and we're doing a serious analysis on this case. And I think when people hear what we have to say tonight, they're going to be absolutely outraged.
I agree. We appreciate the time, sir. Look forward to talking to you again.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate every time I talk to you. You ask great questions, and your audience is so responsive. I really appreciate it. So ask everybody to tune in. It's 8 and 7 Central tonight, and I'll be ready.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Phil. And you guys can follow Dr. Phil on social media. Let him know what you think. Look, homeowners, big trees, going to have big problems. I know the weather's been coming through, lots of big storms. I drove through a lot of them coming back from Florida. A lot of leaves there in the gutter. I talk about the fact that they're combined with wiffle balls at my household, where the boys are out of school now for the summer. What are they doing? Practicing their wiffle ball pitching and hitting in my backyard. Boom, a lot of foul balls into the gutters. Right now, you can save 20% off your entire purchase, 30% if you qualify for the military or senior citizen discount at leaffilter.com/Clay and Buck. Protect your home. Never clean out gutters again with Leaf Filter. America's #1 gutter protection system. Schedule your free inspection. Get 20% off the entire purchase at leaffilter.com/Clay and Buck, plus an additional 10% off with a senior or military discount. Free inspection, 30% off at leaffilter.com/Clay and Buck. Again, that website, leaffilter.com/Clay and Buck. See the representative for warranty details. Promotion 20% off plus a 10% senior military discount at leaffilter.com/Clay and Buck.